The Alexa Bliss and Bray Wyatt teases continue on Monday Night Raw this week with what the next and latest signing from Triple H's regime to WWE. Drew McIntyre is medically disqualified from competing on SmackDown in a title match. We'll talk about that. Speaking of SmackDown, we got the ratings for last week's episode on FS1. A nice touching Umaga tribute on Monday Night Raw last night. 2 teases have been set out for a future Becky Lynch feud on Raw 2. Barry Windham, some very sad news regarding his health and the latest updates on it. And the Ric Flair documentary on Peacock now finally has a release date. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone's doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of WWE, and let's start off talking about the continued teases for Alexa Bliss and a change of character and a reunion with Bray Wyatt. Now, in last night's edition of Monday Night Raw, in the main event of last night's edition of Monday Night Raw, a massive character change was continued to be teased during the broadcast, with an earlier 3-way match granting Bayley entry into a number 1 contenders match on next week's edition of Raw. There was another in the main event. Another triple threat match between Alexa Bliss, Nikki Cross, and Becky Lynch was held to determine who would move on to face Bayley next week for the chance to get a Raw Women's Championship shot against Bianca Belair. But before the match kicked off, Alexa Bliss was shown stretching backstage. You can see the picture right next to me with the Uncle Howdy Bray Wyatt logo once again flashing on the screen behind her. This is one of several instances in which this has happened. There have been several times since the return of Bray Wyatt that this has happened, including at Crown Jewel, last week on Raw. It happened on a Raw after Crown Jewel as well. Now, during the match, Bliss showed a more aggressive style of offense, including one spot, which teased a very familiar move. Mid-match, Bliss dramatically teased doing a Sister Abigail, a signature finishing move of Bray Wyatt's, on Becky Lynch before a reversal prevented the move from happening. In the end, Damage Control, Io Sky and Dakota Kai interfered in the match, taking out Becky Lynch and leaving her driven through the announcer's table at ringside. This opened up the opportunity for Bliss to hit her Twisted Bliss on Nikki Cross and pick up the pinfall victory. So the question now becomes, is Alexa Bliss already possessed in some way by Uncle Howdy and or Bray Wyatt? What is the payoff for the long-running visual hint that the pair will continue to be bonded as in past character iterations? We'll have to wait and see, certainly. And it's quite interesting because Bliss, after Monday Night Raw as well, there was a WWE exclusive clip that was posted on social media. And Bliss said she was going to channel her newfound aggression to take on Bayley. Bliss, of course, will take on Bayley next week on Monday Night Raw. If you don't recall, or you're new to pro wrestling or new to WWE, Bliss was aligned with the Fiend Bray Wyatt during his previous run with WWE in 2020 to 2021. Bliss's dark character work continued after Wyatt was written off as she took on a new alliance in the form of an inanimate doll, Lily, which you can also see on the screen right there. But since Bray Wyatt's return at Extreme Rules, fans have been hopeful of a character change for Alexa Bliss, and this matchup could set the scene for the long-awaited change and a title shot for Bliss. They're building to something. It's very clear here, in my opinion, that they're building to something, and that something, one would think, is this reunion, is this... I don't know. I like it because, one, they were doing nothing with Alexa Bliss anyway. Alexa Bliss felt very rudderless. Her character felt aimless, and she had turned babyface. She had undergone the therapy and all that kind of stuff, and it felt like, okay, what's going to happen with her? Remember when she had all of that therapy? Was that earlier this year or last year, whenever it was? And then she came back and she was kind of exactly the same. She came back, I think it was at Elimination Chamber in February, and then didn't really do anything. So it felt like her character's been, again, quite aimless since then. And since Bray Wyatt came back, everyone thought, what does this mean? Are we going to see a reunion? Are we going to see them not mention it? What's going to happen? Because, of course, you can't forget history. And the history shows that the last time that Alexa Bliss and Bray Wyatt were in the same ring or near enough to each other, she turned on The Fiend. And we haven't seen The Fiend since. That was at WrestleMania 37. It was Bray Wyatt, The Fiend Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton. The big culmination of a storyline that had been going on for months, where Randy Orton had set The Fiend on fire in the Firefly Inferno match at TLC in December 2020. And The Fiend had disappeared for a while. Then he'd come back at Fastlane in 2021. And he was the scarred up, charred up, burnt version of The Fiend for a brief period of time. And then at WrestleMania, he transformed into a new version of The Fiend with Alexa Bliss in tow, and he faced Randy Orton. Everyone assumed The Fiend was going to win the match, but what happened when it looked like The Fiend was going to win the match? It was actually the opening match of WrestleMania 37 Night 2. What happened? Alexa Bliss turned in the way that all of this supernatural stuff happened. She turned on the Fiend because the Fiend turned around and Alexa Bliss was sitting on top of this giant box at ringside, and she had this crown on and it was spitting. I mean, it's meant to be the WWE equivalent of blood because they can't show blood, so it was sort of this black ink all over her face, and the Fiend was distracted. He got hit with an RKO and he lost the match. And the Fiend, after the match, looked betrayed and he was devastated. And then he disappeared. He vanished into the darkness, and we never saw him again. He never made, he hasn't, and he still has yet to make, Bray Wyatt's version anyway, he's yet to make another appearance on WWE television. The Fiend that showed up at Extreme Rules as part of the Wyatt return, that wasn't Bray Wyatt. That was someone else portraying that. So the Fiend Bray Wyatt, we have yet to see him once again since Wyatt returned to WWE. Now, Wyatt has referenced him on television. He's referenced the character, saying that people want him to be the Fiend, and maybe Alexa Bliss and everything that's going on with her is going to coincide with the Fiend's return. But clearly, since Bray Wyatt's return, something has changed in the Alexa Bliss character. Again, is she possessed? Is she slowly transforming? Because you have to remember as well, when Alexa Bliss first sort of united or formed with the Fiend and Bray Wyatt, that was a slow burn too. It was in the Wyatt Swamp fight at Extreme Rules in 2020, and Alexa Bliss was kind of a premonition at the time to Braun Strowman, who they were building on the history of Braun Strowman and Alexa Bliss with the Mixed Match Challenge, and that was back in 2018. This goes back really far, this story, and gets quite convoluted. But so that happened. She got involved in that storyline, and on an episode of SmackDown, Bray Wyatt actually put the mandible claw on Alexa Bliss, and everyone was horrified by it. And since that, after that happened, she had become changed and kind of possessed, and then began to associate herself with the Fiend. And then they had this union, and they were partners. And Alexa Bliss was devastated when the Fiend was taken away by Randy Orton. And again, that storyline hasn't really been paid off. I guess the Fiend was kind of taken out of her through therapy, but now that Bray Wyatt's back, is she getting those feelings once again? Is that darkness that enveloped her once, is that returning? So logically, again, these teases would imply that come next week against Bayley, something's going to happen in that match, whether it's Alexa Bliss meeting the Fiend once again or Bray Wyatt showing up and her winning that match, I don't know. But the issue also is that Bray Wyatt's on SmackDown. So how are they going to have this storyline with Alexa Bliss on Raw and Bray Wyatt on SmackDown, unless they're really keeping the characters separate? So you could have the Fiend show up on Raw, but Bray Wyatt be on SmackDown and then not even address it. They say, I don't know who that is. That's not me. That's the Fiend. That's definitely not me. I mean, he's been saying this on SmackDown when it comes to the LA Knight stuff, hasn't he? He's been saying, I didn't attack LA Knight. It wasn't me. I'm telling you, it wasn't me. So are we getting to the stage where Bray Wyatt doesn't even know what his alter egos are doing anymore? Have all of his alter egos come to life, and can he not control them? He can't control the Fiend on Raw. He can't control Uncle Howdy on SmackDown. He can't control whoever else. We don't know. But clearly something is being teased, and let me know your thoughts, your predictions in the comment section below. Lots of new signings coming into WWE, and we may now know Triple H's next signing. Triple H has made many signings for WWE since he took over creative from Vince McMahon back in July. While most of the recent WWE signings have been names that were previously let go from the company, there has been interest in some independent wrestling stars from the company. Well, we may now know the identity of Triple H's next WWE signing. Per Cassidy Haynes of Bodyslam.net, current NWA star Colby Corino's contract with the promotion is set to expire at the end of the month, making him a free agent from January 1st next year. Corino will reportedly not be re-signing with the company when his contract expires after signing with the NWA in June of last year. There is reportedly a lot of interest in Corino from WWE, with Haynes noting that once Colby is a free agent, it is expected he will be able to travel to Orlando to spend time at the WWE Performance Center. It was also stated that if things go well for Colby during the trip, he can be expected to sign with WWE, reporting to NXT. Of course, Corino is the son of former ECW and NWA World Heavyweight Champion Steve Corino, who just so happens to work for WWE as a trainer and producer for NXT. So most likely Corino is going to be going there. Drew McIntyre was scheduled to be competing in an undisputed tag team championship match this Friday on SmackDown, but that's not going to happen because he's medically disqualified. On last night's episode of Raw, the Usos defended their undisputed WWE tag team championships against the team of, well, it was meant to be Elias and Matt Riddle. It was actually Matt Riddle and Kevin Owens. The winning team was set to defend the titles against Sheamus and Drew McIntyre on this week's episode of SmackDown. However, the match on SmackDown will now no longer take place as originally planned. McIntyre took to Twitter to announce that he is medically disqualified to compete on this week's show. He said, quote, "Unfortunately, I am medically disqualified to compete this Friday on SmackDown. I don't like to miss any shows, as everybody knows, but I promise I'll be back soon." Of course, McIntyre recently was praised behind the scenes for his commitment to WWE's insane work schedule, particularly the insane schedule he was on, competing in multiple countries across multiple nights. We still don't know what this really means. We don't know really what he was medically disqualified for. He's been ill recently. He's had injuries. Of course, earlier this year, he came back from a neck injury. So we don't really know what really is going on all that much. Now, WWE has actually announced, though, they've clarified that the match will indeed go on. However, Sheamus will have an alternate partner who is gratefully quite a familiar face. It's a big opportunity on the horizon for another one of the Brawling Brutes. WWE wrote on their Twitter account of the change, quote, "Breaking, the winners of this undisputed tag team title match on Raw will be defending against Sheamus and Butch this Friday on SmackDown." Of course, a major opportunity for Butch, who used his past experience in War Games to his advantage at Survivor Series War Games, despite having the eventual loss by the Brawling Brutes team against the Bloodline. As I mentioned, last night's Raw featured an undisputed tag team championship match pitting Matt Riddle and a surprise partner Kevin Owens against the Usos. Due to some good work between Sami Zayn and Jey Uso, fascinatingly, it was the Usos who captured the victory over the unlikely duo. In the post-match beatdown, the Bloodline was beating down Matt Riddle before Kevin Owens chased Zayn and the Usos away with a steel chair. However, it left Solo Sikoa alone with Riddle in the ring, and it led to a very nice Umaga tribute, which we'll talk about later on. But we do have a bit of an update when it comes to Drew McIntyre, and again, what this might be. During the latest Wrestling Observer radio show, Dave Meltzer reported the following on McIntyre's injury, saying, quote, "He is injured. I was told an injury, but it's not from a first-hand source, but he's supposed to be back for the Christmas show," that being probably most likely the December 26th show that's in Madison Square Garden. So it's only a couple of weeks, I know that, Meltzer said. As I mentioned, the nature of the injury is yet to be confirmed. According to Meltzer, however, McIntyre shouldn't be out of action for too long. Again, it's just a case of McIntyre having a small injury. Meltzer also noted that McIntyre wanted to wrestle in the match as planned. He said, quote, "The only thing I know is that he wanted to wrestle and they would not let him wrestle. But it's not like it's going to be a long-term thing, at least as it stands right now. But yes, he was basically medically pulled from Friday's show, and Butch will team with Sheamus against the Usos for the Tag Team Championship." So if it was McIntyre's way, he wanted to wrestle in the match, but it's not going to happen. As I said, WWE staff were said to be impressed with McIntyre's commitment, and of course, if we get any confirmation as to what actually the injury is, we'll talk about it here on the channel. We have the ratings for this week's edition of SmackDown. Of course, SmackDown wasn't on Fox last week, it was on FS1, and actually with the numbers, they'll be pretty happy. The show aired on FS1 instead of its regular channel of Fox for the second time in 2 months. The main event saw Santos Escobar take on Ricochet in the final of the SmackDown World Cup, with Ricochet scoring the victory in the match and winning the tournament, booking a future Intercontinental Championship opportunity against Gunther in the future. Per Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics, the show drew 902,000 viewers, which is obviously much lower than the show's rating on Fox last week. However, if you want to compare it to the last time SmackDown was on FS1, it actually was a decent number. The rating is higher than SmackDown's last show to air on FS1 back on October 28, which drew 835,000 viewers. In the key 18 to 49 demographic, the show scored a 0.25, which once again is higher than the 0.23 rating the October 28 show scored. And actually, again, just under 1 million viewers on FS1 is not bad at all for WWE and not bad for FS1. And I think, considering all of the stuff that's going on at the moment when it comes to sports, etc., I think they'll be very, very, very happy. For a preempted show, that's a pretty good number for SmackDown. Speaking of Raw, I mentioned briefly there was this Umaga tribute from Solo Sikoa, and it was absolutely fantastic, actually. Now, it was actually recently the 13th anniversary of the untimely passing of Umaga at just the age of 36 years old, and a member of the WWE faction, The Bloodline, has now adopted his finisher in a tribute on last night's Raw. During a post-match beatdown on Matt Riddle, Solo Sikoa delivered what Corey Graves on commentary said was the Samoan Spike, of course the signature finishing move of Umaga, with Sikoa's thumb also taped in the signature Umaga style. There was definitely a tribute feel to the post-match segment. Again, I don't know if this is going to be the finisher going forward. It felt like it was more than just a tribute, more of a sign also that it's not, obviously it was a tribute, but at the same time it's a, this is going to be the finisher going forward. And I'm really glad of it. For a while, they didn't acknowledge Umaga on television. They've only really started acknowledging him in the last maybe year or so, 18 months or so, and I think they didn't want to acknowledge him because of the nature of his passing, of course, at such a young age. And when he was released by WWE back in I believe it was 2009, it was because of failing a wellness test. And Umaga was one of my favorites. I was a huge Umaga fan, even going back to when he was Jamal. I was a fan, but I was a huge Umaga fan. Great gimmick, worked the gimmick, lived the gimmick, and the athleticism. I mean, talk about a super heavyweight, but he could fly around the ring. It was incredible, absolutely incredible. And again, I was such a big fan of him, and losing him at such a young age is so tragic. But his legacy lives on with his nephews, the Usos and Solo Sikoa, especially with tributes like that. So fantastic to see. On Raw last night, Becky Lynch seemingly had two feuds teased for the future. Last night on Raw, as I mentioned, there were a pair of three-way women's matches with the winners set to face off next week to determine who would become the #1 contender to Bianca Belair's Women's Championship. However, in advance of the first three-way match, an in-ring promo exchange between Bayley and Becky Lynch happened while they traded barbs and teased one epic feud of their own, with Lynch pointing out that while Bayley completely held down the women's division during the pandemic era, since their timing hasn't aligned. With back and forth periods of out of action, Becky Lynch and Bayley would be one incredible feud for the ages, and looks like that's where they're going, particularly after Becky Lynch returning and Bayley having so many opportunities and failing to win the Raw Women's Championship. Alternately, however, though, this is quite interesting. After their promo exchange, the entrances for the subsequent three-way match, which included a huge stare down on the ramp, dedicating an extended shot of the stare down between Rhea Ripley on her way to the ring and Becky Lynch leaving it. Could this be another massive WWE feud? Now, it's not the first time they've teased this. When Becky Lynch returned on SmackDown a couple of weeks ago, Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch had an extended stare down. So it feels like, to me, they're teasing that it's going to be Becky Lynch versus Bayley. For now, that's going to be the feud, because I think Alexa Bliss wins that Raw Women's Championship #1 contender match. So Becky Lynch will face Bayley, and then maybe in the future, Becky Lynch faces Rhea Ripley. But at the same time, Becky Lynch has also got a date with Ronda Rousey, pretty much set for WrestleMania 39. So where all of these feuds fit in, I'm not particularly sure. We'll have to wait and see. And this is a really bit of sad news here. WWE Hall of Famer Barry Windham was hospitalized over the weekend, and his family launched a GoFundMe page on Monday to assist with medical costs. The Windham family shared the wrestler suffered a massive cardiac heart attack, while traveling through the Atlanta airport and went into cardiac arrest. Quote, "He is currently in the ICU and has undergone an emergency procedure to save his life," the family said. "As a family, we are impatiently waiting to hear that he will be okay, but as of now, the future is uncertain." Of course, Windham is the uncle of WWE's Bray Wyatt and former WWE superstar Bo Dallas. He's a one-time NWA World Heavyweight Champion, two-time WWF World Tag Team Champion with his brother Mike Rotunda, the father of Wyatt and Dallas. Windham was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2012 as a member of the Four Horsemen, which he was a part of from 1988 to 1989, and then again in 1990 until 1991. Windham first debuted in 1979 and retired in 2010, following a decorated career that saw him win titles across North America and Japan, most notably winning dozens of NWA titles across the South. He said, the family said, quote, "After those countless years of wrestling matches, traveling and entertaining worldwide, he experienced a number of taxing injuries and ended up undergoing multiple surgeries. That led to other health complications," the family said. Barry hung his boots up for the last time in the early 2000s. Since then, he has been limited with work due to his medical history, as well as left without health insurance. Several wrestlers have shared the GoFundMe link on Monday. You'll be able to find it on social media. JoJo Offerman, of course, Bray Wyatt's fiance, tweeted tweeted out, quote, "It would mean the world if you could please help in any way that you can," referring to Windham's recovery. And again, here's hoping, thoughts, prayers, well wishes to Barry Windham's family, his loved ones, his fans, and we're all rooting for you, and you can pull through this, absolutely. Finally, we have an update on Ric Flair and the Peacock documentary. A new documentary on the life and career of Ric Flair will air on Peacock starting Monday, December 26th. The 120-minute documentary titled Woo, Becoming Ric Flair has been directed by Ben Hauser, VP and executive producer at WWE, and narrated by Emmy Award-winning sportscaster Tom Rinaldi. Flair has spoken extensively about this. It appears, seemingly, as I mentioned, that the relationship between Flair and WWE has improved in recent months, with Flair himself teasing a possible appearance at the Royal Rumble on January 28, 2023. Flair would also later confirm he's been invited to the 30-year anniversary edition of Monday Night Raw on January 23, 2023. Of course, WWE had previously cut ties with Flair following the backlash from a Dark Side of the Ring episode that aired last year, removing the Nature Boys Woo from their intro video, pulling all Flair merchandise from WWE Shop, and even removing a Flair-related episode from its Storytime series on Peacock/the WWE Network. Prior to the controversy, of course, Flair wasn't even with WWE because he asked for his WWE release and was granted the same, fueling rumors that he was going to go to AEW, which seemingly was the plan to manage Andrade El Idolo. However, several reports noted that AEW decided against signing Flair due to the continued backlash from the aforementioned Dark Side of the Ring episode, and now it looks like he's back in the good graces of WWE. So there you go, guys. It's the latest WWE news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on today's WWE news stories in the comment section below, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.